Good morning, everybody. We are live here from the birdhouse. It is Tuesday, June 6th. We are already in the month of June. And if you are anywhere in the upstate New York area, you might be also in a cloud of smoke like we are. There's air advisories, and the smell of smoke is in the air from the wildfires out in Canada, which is pretty crazy. So make sure to take it easy out if you're outside today and you're smelling that smoke. Pretty crazy stuff. But anyways, we are here with an update about the different things people are seeing and experiencing in their backyards. We've got some photos to share with you, some sounds to share with you. And as always, we like to know what kind of things you're seeing in your yard or when you're out hiking. You can throw those in the comments. If you have any questions, you can throw those in there too. I'd like to thank everybody who came out to our native plant sale, the first ever native plant sale that we had here last Saturday. It was a big success. And actually, at the very end of the sale, she sold off the very last few plants she had. So it was a huge success, and we'll have Amanda's Garden back here again in the fall. So be on the lookout for that, probably September or so you can expect that. Also, this Saturday we'll be at the Adirondack Mountain Club's Outdoor Expo out at Mendon Ponds Park. So we'll be there on Saturday. So that should be a lot of fun. There's a whole bunch of different organizations that'll be there promoting themselves, and we are one of them. So we will be there on Saturday. It should be lots of fun. And this Sunday, we have our first ever plant sale with the local Hosta Club. So we've got all kinds of things going on here this weekend. And the Hosta Club will be here at the birdhouse this Sunday morning. So not only do they have hostas, they have a whole bunch of other plants as well. And they wanted us to let you know that they do take credit cards, which is not always the case with these plant sales. So let's get started here. First thing going on today is we've got our caption contest going on again. And if you've ever participated in the caption contest, you might know already how it works. So on our Facebook page, we have this post. It's pinned right up at the very top of our Facebook page. And if you come up with a caption for it, and that caption gets the most reactions, whether it be comments or likes or little emojis, then you win a $25 gift certificate to the store. So it's completely free to try, and it's right on our Facebook page. So if you visit the Birdhouse Facebook page, look at the very top. This will be pinned at the top of the page, and put in your best caption. So that is going on right now. This is a photo here from, I believe, from our photo contest in the past, and this is from Ed P, who sends in a lot of photos to us here. So go ahead and join the fun with the caption contest. So then, as far as updates go with bluebirds, we've got some updates with bluebirds and hummingbirds and orioles. Bluebirds, people are reporting the first round of fledglings are leaving their nest boxes. So you might, if you are lucky enough to get bluebirds and they are nesting in your yard and your houses you've got, you might start to see some little ones following the parents around. It's totally normal. Even if you see them bouncing around on the ground, that's totally normal. Any kind of baby bird that you might see bouncing around on the ground, even if it looks like their feathers aren't fully formed, that's totally normal. If you're feeling concerned, just keep an eye on them. Make sure their parents are visiting them. But this is just usual part of their fledging and leaving the nest. They tend to stick around the nest site for a while, kind of hop around on the ground, get fed by the parents still, and then they're off on their own. So bluebirds, definitely first broods are starting to be out in the world, which means that the parents will probably start the nest building process again, or they'll be coming and going back from the nest box as they start their second brood. So they can have 2 or 3 broods a year. And don't be surprised if you start to see the females a little bit less, because they might be laying their eggs and sitting on those once they have their nest full. So bluebirds, people are reporting that first brood is getting out into the world. So you might see them going after your mealworms more than you have been in the past. So lots of hungry little nestlings out there, including this bird here, which has been doing this kind of activity, this is an oriole sitting on her nest, and orioles do make these hanging nests like this. So if you see any kind of nest like this that's hanging from a tree nearby, it's probably going to be an oriole, probably a Baltimore oriole. Orchard orioles will make a hanging nest as well. But we've been seeing them carrying around nesting material, and that means that the eggs are being laid and that those nestlings are going to be hatching fairly soon. It's usually around early June where we get reports of orioles becoming more and more sparse at feeders, which makes sense. If that female is sitting on her eggs, she's not going to be coming to the feeder as often. But one thing you can do is put out mealworms for them. If you haven't already, you can put out those mealworms, and once those eggs hatch, you'll see that the orioles tend to come back to those same feeders to get those mealworms to feed their nestlings. So one way you can help keep them coming is by putting out the mealworms. If you don't want to deal with the mealworms, they're not for everybody. You might just want to take a couple weeks off from feeding the jelly if nobody is coming to it. Otherwise, keep the jelly out. You might get catbirds and mockingbirds and things coming to it. But ultimately, what usually happens is that the adults, once those young have fledged, so not just once they hatch, but when they actually are leaving the nest, the adults will bring them back to the bird feeders and feed them beakfuls of jelly and that kind of a thing. So that's probably still 2-3 weeks away or so until those juveniles start to come themselves to the feeders. But one way you can keep the adults coming is by putting out the mealworms, because right now is when the females are sitting on those nests and tending to those nests. Hummingbirds. So just within the past, I would say 4 or 5 days, we've had more and more people reporting their first hummingbird sightings coming to their backyards. So it's been a pretty slow season in general. A lot of people saying they haven't seen the same numbers that they've seen in the past, and that seems to be a trend. Every year, people are seeing less and less and less. But just over the past few days, we've had quite a few people say they've seen their first hummingbird either in their yard coming to flowers or coming to a feeder. So if you haven't seen any yet, you might just be able to start to see them now. So don't give up hope. There are some things you can do if you're kind of over changing the nectar out so often, because you do want to change it out every 2 to 4 days usually. You can add what's called nectar defender to your nectar, and that will keep it fresh more like a week or 10 days. So a lot of people do that. Or if you haven't really seen any activity and you want to put up a feeder for them, but you don't want to deal with the nectar, we do have this one called the Humbug. And this one is different in the way where they call it a hummingbird protein feeder, which is totally different than the nectar feeders. And how it works is the top comes off, and inside you're supposed to put banana peels. I guess you could put any kind of fruit in there really, but the banana peels are pretty accessible, and they're easy to maintain. So what you do is you put the banana peels or any kind of fruit or skin from a fruit in there. And what it does is it attracts fruit flies. And those fruit flies will lay their eggs in here, and you'll get more and more fruit flies as time goes on. And those fruit flies will then just start crawling through these little, so these slits here are little holes in and out of the feeder. So the fruit flies will start crawling all around the feeder. And because it's red, it helps draw in the hummingbirds. The hummingbirds will pick the little fruit flies off of the feeder. So it's one way to provide the hummingbirds with some food, but it's way, way less maintenance than the nectar feeder. So as the summer goes on, and I've got all my hummingbird plants in bloom, I tend to switch to this humbug feeder because they're getting nectar from the plants I've been planting, and I can give them some protein here with the different feeders. So that's another option if you're looking to feed them, but you don't want to deal with the nectar. And as the season goes on, and if you're getting bees and wasps and all that kind of good stuff, we do have these nectar guard tips for a bunch of the feeders we carry. Any of the the feeders that look like this from Aspects that are called the Humzinger feeders, or the Hum Blossom. They have different names. You can put these little tips on the inside of them, and the hummingbirds can penetrate them, but the bees and wasps can't. It just creates a little barrier that makes it harder for the bees and wasps to feed from the feeder. So that's the hummingbird update, and I'd love to know if you guys are on what your hummingbird situation has been like. If you've had the same, if you've had more, if you've had less, I'd love to know what your hummingbird situation is. Now, as far as some other birds that you might see or hear coming into the area, one of them is the black-billed cuckoo. So we do have birds here in the upstate New York area. If you're on the East Coast, you'll get them as well in general. So this is the black-billed cuckoo, and we do have two different species of cuckoo, and I tend to hear them first before I see them. But the black-billed cuckoo has, like its name suggests, black bill. It has a reddish colored eye, and then look at that really, really long tail. So both of the cuckoos will have very long tails. The black-billed cuckoo is generally a darker color than the other species, the yellow-billed cuckoo. But let me play you their calls, because they do have pretty interesting calls. So that's the call of the black-billed cuckoo, and I'm playing these from the Merlin app. If you're familiar with any of the birding apps, you probably have Merlin. We talk about it all the time because it also has a feature where it will listen to the calls you're hearing and tell you what they are. So if you think you might hear a cuckoo, you can pull up the Merlin app and you can do the sound ID, and it'll listen and tell you what bird it is you are hearing. So there is the black-billed cuckoo we have, and then there's the yellow-billed cuckoo. And this is the one that I tend to see and hear more of, but I mean, that's just me. But the yellow-billed cuckoo, you'll notice, has a yellowish bill. So it's got a black and yellow bill. And then its tail has much more white on it than the black-billed cuckoo. So this is the yellow-billed cuckoo, and this is what they sound like. I heard my first one not last weekend, but the weekend before, Memorial Day weekend. I heard my first yellow-billed. It almost sounds like a squeaky toy, like a dog's squeaky toy or something like that. So that's the yellow-billed cuckoo. So their calls are definitely different than other birds that you'll hear. So I just thought I would tell you that those guys are out and about and flowing into the area. So the black-billed cuckoo and the yellow-billed cuckoo. So a couple different species there. And then you might see these if you are out later at night around dusk. And, if you're seeing something flying around in the air and it's not an owl, it's almost flying like a falcon, could very well be one of these. This is called a common nighthawk, and it comes out later in the evening, like its name would suggest. It's in that same family as like the whippoorwills, but it has a pretty identifying characteristic there. On the bottom of its wing, it has a bright white stripe. So almost like a mockingbird. When a mockingbird flies, how it's got those white patches underneath its wings. The common nighthawk has the same kind of features. I was around a campfire a couple weeks ago, again, around Memorial Day, and at dusk, there was something flying around the field, and you could see these bright white stripes underneath their wings, and it was characteristic of a common nighthawk. So they are around, especially at dusk, when we get towards migration season and they're migrating and moving through the area a little bit more. You might see them during the day, especially in groups. You might see them, but I thought I would mention that too. So something a little bit different that you might see in the area. Now, you guys have been sending in photos. Mark J here sent in a ton of different photos of things he's been seeing around the area. So I thought I would share some of those with you, some of them being some pretty neat sightings here. Great blue heron. So here's a great blue heron made an appearance on the light pole. So this was sent in by Mark. And there's a couple different heron species that you can find here. Great blue heron is going to be the most common. We have the little green the smaller green herons, which are not uncommon by any means. We also have what are called night herons, black-crowned night herons. Again, if you're out kind of towards dusk, you might see them by the water. So there's different heron species, and as we get into the fall, which is months away, you might start to see the great egrets, especially around waterways as they're migrating back down south. So the most common, though, that you'll see right now is going to be great blue heron, and this is a photo here sent in by Mark. Some flycatcher activity here. There's different flycatchers we have in the area. How do you know you have a flycatcher? They tend to kind of have a stocky, I like to say almost like stocky shoulders, like it almost looks like their shoulders are up. And also when they're perched, they tend to flick their tails. So we have different flycatchers. The eastern wood pewee, which is right here, is one of the more common. And actually, I should play you their call too, because that is a great way to identify them. It almost sounds like they're saying their name, and it sounds like they're saying POE. So I'm going to play you that too. This is very high pitch. So you'll hear POE. So that is the eastern wood pewee. And so that is a flycatcher we have around here. We also have another one called the eastern phoebe, which is darker in color, but similar in size. And they sound like they're saying Phoebe. So you might hear either of those if you are really anywhere outside, anywhere that has any kind of trees, any kind of park, you can find them all over the place. So this was a photo sent in by Mark of an eastern wood pewee. Now there's another type of flycatcher, and this is the biggest one that we have in the area. This is called the great crested flycatcher. And the great crested flycatcher is a cavity nesting bird. So if you're in a spot that has a lot of trees, especially some hollow trees, which is pretty common around here, especially with all the ash trees that are unfortunately dying off, the great crested flycatcher is a bird to be on the lookout for. And so they're quite large, and they have I can play you their call as well. We heard one of these when we were doing our last walk at Tinker Nature Park. So that's one of their calls. That's one I tend to hear the more of, though. This kind of call right here can be quite loud, actually, too. So that is the great crested flycatcher. And so here's a photo of that was sent in also by Mark, who's been out birding, it looks like. So we showed this one with our last broadcast that we did of this. This is a neat behavior thing that's going on with the northern flicker. So Mark says, female northern flicker cleaning out the house. And if you look, she's got something in her bill. When the young birds, when they do their business, if you will, in their nesting cavities, it tends to be in a little sack. So what this flicker is doing is actually removing that waste from the nesting cavity. It's called a fecal sac, and they do tend to remove those from the nest site. So that's what this activity is right here. It's not the most beautiful thing, but it's a pretty interesting thing to be able to catch on camera there. So this is a cool photo that was sent in by Mark showing that behavior here. And he sent in some more photos here of the flickers at their nesting site. So here is one of the adults feeding the chicks. And then here's another one in flight, and you can see the yellow wash of their feathers. So the northern flicker, there's the eastern version and the western version. They're all considered northern flickers, but the northern flickers on the east coast, on the east side of the country, have what's called a yellow wash underneath their feathers. So when they're in flight, you can really see that yellow underneath their feathers. Now on the west coast, it's red. So they call them yellow shafted flickers and red shafted flickers. And we have the yellow shafted here on the east coast. So if you go out west, you'll see when they're in flight, it has a red wash underneath its feathers. And then here's another photo of the flicker. I saw a whole bunch of flickers out yesterday on a walk. I must have seen about 6 of them or so, which was a lot. So lots of flickers out there. Another photo series here sent in by Mark is this pileated woodpecker and juveniles. They're probably ready to fledge soon. So you can see those little juveniles sticking their head out of the nesting cavity. And then I love this picture here of what it looks like one of the juveniles just clinging onto the side of the tree. Great photo here, again sent in by Mark. And they just look completely disheveled, like they just woke up or something. So really, really cute photo there sent in by Mark. And then indigo buntings. Not too many reports of indigo buntings coming to people's feeders, but they do come to people's feeders. And they tend to like smaller seeds. So they like the Niger seed or the millet. Sunflower hearts are another type of seed that they like. So be on the lookout for indigo bunting. Mark, it looks like, saw them in a couple different spots and sent in some different photos here. So these are both males. Males are just like a gorgeous, gorgeous indigo blue, like their name suggests. But here's the female. So the female almost looks kind of like a sparrow. She's just kind of brown, very plain colored, but you can see there is a light kind of wash of blue over her. So females you might see at your feeders also. So if you see something that looks kind of like a sparrow but a little off, take a double look, because it could very well be a female indigo bunting. Some other birds out there. This is a veery. So this is a type of thrush. Another type of thrush we mentioned earlier in the broadcast was a bluebird. Robins are a type of thrush. We have shared photos of birds like hermit thrush and wood thrush. But then there's another one called a veery, and they're pretty like a light tan color. You'll find them in the woods, and they have a pretty descriptive. They have a pretty interesting call, and I'll play you that too. It's pretty unique. So that's the veery call, and you're likely to see them in the woods. So pretty cool photo there of a veery, and this was sent in last week by Bob of the Scarlet Tanager, and I love this. This bird is so, so beautiful. So if you see a very bright red bird with black wings, that's going to be Scarlet Tanager. They tend not to come to feeders, but during migration season, sometimes people get them coming to their sunflower heart feeders, or especially bird baths. So if you've got bird baths that have any kind of moving water feature, that get those solar fountain inserts that you can put into your bird bath, and they make it like a fountain feature, those can tend to attract more and more of a diversity of birds for you too. So, and then a few warbler pictures here. So this is a photo of a hooded warbler sent in by Mark. It looks like it's singing its little heart out, and they have a black cap on the top of their head, and it also wraps around their face. So it almost looks like they're wearing a little hood. And then a really beautiful bird here. This is a golden winged warbler. So a couple photos of them sent in by Mark, who saw them at Mendon Ponds Park. So lots of cool things out there. We will keep you posted about the different types of birds, and as we get on to the season, the different types of butterflies, as we start to see more and more of those that people are seeing. We're probably a couple, like 1 or 2 weeks out from starting to see monarch butterflies, but keep your eye out for those too. Sometimes we get some early ones. Lots of tiger swallowtails out there right now. So we like to share what kind of, not only bird, but any kind of nature activity that people are seeing in their yards. So look forward to that. It looks like a few of you guys are on here. Randy says, hello, everybody. Steel Monkey says, I don't have a question. I just wanted to say that I love the updates. Much appreciated. Oh, you are very, very welcome. Happy to do it. Jen says, hi, all. Still getting orioles coming to the feeder frequently throughout each day. Have seen a hummingbird a few times so far, so that's great. And Timothy says, Jen, same here. So Timothy and Jen are both seeing orioles every day, so that's awesome. And some hummingbird activity too, so that's really great to hear. And let's see, Timothy says, visited by our first pileated woodpecker this year, and then again the next day. So I think he's around. Very excited. That is very exciting. Yeah, the pileated woodpeckers, just like your other woodpecker species, will come to suet feeders. They will sometimes come to peanut feeders if they're large enough for them to land on. And they'll even eat sunflower seeds if they can, again, land on the feeder, if it's big enough for them, which can sometimes be a challenge with these big pileated woodpeckers. So, and be on the lookout for these guys, these little, the little juveniles. Let's see. Timothy says, "Where are my chickadees? I don't see them all of a sudden." So that could be if you were getting them at your feeders and you're not anymore. It could be kind of the same thing with why people will stop seeing their orioles for a while. It could be that the female is sitting on her eggs at her nest, and they could just be kind of hunkered down at the nest site. That's not uncommon. So if you're not seeing them suddenly, give it a couple weeks, and don't be surprised if all of a sudden not only do you see the chickadees coming back, but they might be coming back with birds that kind of look like this one in the photo, where their feathers are kind of all disheveled. They almost look like they're still growing in, which is usually the case. So they're probably sitting on a nest right now, would be my best guess. So it looks like that's everybody's comments and questions. We'll be live from the Adirondack Mountain Expo on Saturday, just so to kind of give you guys an update about who is there and what's going on there. Should be lots of fun. They have a full schedule of events going on. And then we'll be back on Tuesday with another broadcast and sharing your photos. So absolutely send those in if you've got them. But have a great week. And like I said, if you're in the upstate New York area, take it easy if you're outside, because it is smoky out there. It's pretty crazy. So we will talk to you soon. We'll talk to you